You're listening to the Jōrni Podcast. Could human touch regulate our nervous system simply because we are deeply wired for connection? Join me for an insightful episode. This episode contains adult subject matter, and some listeners may be triggered by this content. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Jōrni Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. Trying to find relief for years while nothing seems to help can break us down. When the treatments keep failing, we start to wonder if there's something fundamental being missed about what is actually wrong. Kiara Armstrong has been practicing yoga for nearly 25 years and teaching for 15. Over the past decade, she has trained yoga teachers around the world and taught anatomy in both yoga and massage school settings. With a clinical background as a California certified massage therapist and lived experience healing from complex PTSD, Kiara brings a rare depth of perspective to the body. Her trauma-informed teaching blends formal study with personal insight and is rooted in principles that guide all her work. Anatomy-based, consent-centered, and biomechanically precise. Early in her teaching, Kiara became captivated by the power of hands-on assists, but repeated exposure to imprecise or unsafe touch, including in her own body, led her to question conventional methods. During her time at Yoga Journal, she witnessed a broad range of assist techniques and recognized the urgent need for a clear, teachable, and anatomically sound system. Over time, through thousands of hours of teaching, experimenting, and refining, she developed the rubber band method, a structured approach that distinguishes between assisting and adjusting, prioritizes teacher sustainability, and helps instructors read student tissues through tactile awareness. Let's meet Kiara Armstrong. Hi, Kiara. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because we are going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, and that is regulating the nervous system. I get very excited when we talk about that. So thank you for being here today and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for this conversation, and I'm excited to talk about a tool that can help regulate the nervous system.
Yeah, absolutely. We all have one. This will benefit all of our listeners. So
yes, it will.
That's amazing. And for starters, would you like to share a little bit about your story or maybe even the parts of your journey that you feel connect to where you are today and what it is that you do today so our listeners can get to know you a little bit?
Yeah, in a way, I feel like my entire life has led up to today and what I'm doing. But I guess like from a credentialed standpoint, I'm a yoga teacher. I've been teaching for 15 years. I've been practicing for 25 years. I'm also a massage therapist here in California. We're certified in our state. It's equivalent to licensure elsewhere. But what kind of led me to this tool that I'm presenting today, which is touch, and touch in the form of hands-on yoga assists in yoga, is through my journey of healing from complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And so for me, with healing from complex post-traumatic stress disorder, I reached this point in my journey where I had essentially given up conventional tools and decided to dive into somatic tools only and natural tools only. And it was really in exploring so many different things to heal from complex post-traumatic stress disorder. It was touch that really came to the fore. And I experienced touch in lots of different ways, but the way that I've come to find that it can be easily accessible and presented and available to just everyone or anyone who practices yoga essentially is by using it as hands-on yoga assists.
That sounds amazing. And thank you for sharing a little bit about your journey. I feel that a lot of us come through our own experiences and our own, I want to say, need for answers when we can't find them in some of the more conventional places. Yeah, I'm glad you found something that helped move your healing journey forward in that sense. So yeah, share a little bit about what it is that you discovered. I'm very curious.
Yeah. So for me in my journey, in a way, I've been dealing with mental health issues, if you will, for the bulk of my life. And in my early 20s, I had a triggering incident, if you will. And even though my entire story was that of trauma, I was misdiagnosed as having bipolar disorder. And complex post-traumatic stress disorder can be misdiagnosed as bipolar. And so I spent almost a decade being medicated for bipolar disorder, and it wasn't working. And instead of the doctors reevaluating my diagnosis, they would just increase the dosage of the medication I was on. They would just stack more medications, and then they would just rotate out more medications. I was on an impossible amount of medications and at doses that honestly should probably be illegal. I temporarily lost my eyesight, like I went blind from side effects temporarily. I would go into full body paralysis temporarily. I had really horrific side effects. But all along the way and during this time, no one kind of paused and said, is this the right diagnosis? Instead, the doctors, and I'd seen so many of them over this time, just trying to find help, trying to find relief. Finally, a doctor said, you know what? Nothing's working. This is treatment resistant bipolar. We're going to send you for electric convulsive shock therapy. And I was ready for it. My willpower was so broken down at that point that I was willing to do anything to find relief. And a friend had said, Kiara, go and get a second opinion. Like before you do something that extreme, in her words, it is helpful for people. But for me, she said, just go get someone else to look at this situation that you're in. I walked into a doctor's office who specialized in bipolar, and she heard my story and instantly said, sweetheart, you don't have bipolar disorder. You have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And to be honest with you, I fainted. I actually fainted when she said it because it was like, oh, like maybe this is something that I can heal. Anyway, I took a sabbatical from work. And in that moment, I decided I will never touch pharmaceuticals again because I just had so many terrible experiences. And so that kind of started me on my journey of somatic healing. What somatic or natural tools are out there to help me heal from this? And I explored truly just about anything. And yoga was very much at the heart of what I was exploring. Of course, pranayama, mantra, even music. There's just so many aspects of how you can build in somatic or body-based healing in a yoga practice. And we do today in most yoga practices. We find some way to build it in beyond just the asana or the physical practice. But 20 some odd years ago, I was building in things myself. Anyway, touch really came to the fore, and touch became not just in yoga, but like with somatic body workers, with massage therapists in lots of different contexts. Touch just rose to the top as being this thing that really helped me regulate myself, because touch is a form of co-regulation, specifically safe, consensual touch. And so when I finally got to a point where I felt healed enough to start working with other people, I, of course, became a yoga instructor, eventually a massage therapist, and wanted to give back some of these tools and decided, okay, touch really needs to be at the heart of this, because touch was just so healing for me. And also because touch is something that in our regular lives, we don't really see. You don't see it very often. We don't emphasize how important it is to use touch as a healing or health tool. And so being able to bring it into yoga spaces is a way that we can start to introduce it, not as intimate touch, not as clinical touch, very context driven, specific to yoga, but can offer some somatic guidance and improve embodiment and all of the other health markers that touch has been proven to improve.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And thank you for sharing a little bit more about your story. I feel that touch is one of those things that can be so healing, even self-touch. And if we're at first starting off with just that and all of the little receptors that we can stimulate, and of course, causing that regulation, the vagus nerve, all of that to be involved. So I feel touch is a wonderful approach to that. Now, tell us a little bit about maybe if listeners are at a point where touch doesn't quite feel safe yet. So that often happens, of course, with complex PTSD trauma, even chronic stress can do that to you where you just don't want to be touched and are even afraid of your own touch. Doesn't feel good or it feels even threatening at some points. How can our listeners come to a point where they can start working with what you have found to be helpful as the consensual touch, the self-touch, things like that? How do people start working with that if they're in a place where that might not quite feel safe yet?
Yeah. And I want to acknowledge that is 100% true in the sense that even with massage, I've had clients on my table who've had PTSD and massage was way too much. It was like, whoa. In my own personal journey, I remember signing up for a 4-hands massage where it was 2 therapists working on me. And though I felt safe with these practitioners, as soon as I had all those hands on me, it was way too much. And I had to get off the table. And maybe that's one extreme context. It could be just as simple as a hug could be too much for someone. That is very much a real thing. And I want to acknowledge that. I think how we bridge that gap between isolating ourselves and not allowing there to be touch to getting to that point where we allow it is agency. It's 100% agency. And if you think about trauma in a way is in the brain felt like there isn't safety, right? If I was just to really boil it down and simplify it in a way, it's this chronic state of kind of not feeling safe. If someone gives you agency or you are in an environment where agency is being upheld at all times, meaning your choice, your decision is always honored, that creates safety. And so as soon as that safety is there, then you might be like, okay, I'll try this. And I do think in the context of hands-on yoga assists, they are brief and yet not brief, meaning with a massage, it can just be like overwhelming. They're usually an hour or maybe a half an hour, but they are this longer set of time and you're just being inundated with touch versus a yoga assist is, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds, maybe a minute. I've never technically sat down and timed it, but it's a couple of breaths. And so that is this limited amount of time, context driven, meaning it's specific for the assist itself. And it's making a point to complement the pose that the student is in, meaning not only the actions of the pose, but the sensations of the pose. So the receiver has agency, has decided, yes, I'm open to receiving this touch. And then when they receive that touch and it mimics or enhances the sensations of the pose, it feels aligned, it feels simple, and it feels contained, if you will. So that would be my answer to it. I mean, it's different for everyone what allows them to bridge that gap. But I think agency is the first and foremost thing, which is dependent upon clear consent.
That makes a lot of sense because very often in these traumatic situations, that's what we don't have is consent or choice over what happens or can feel that way. So yeah, absolutely. And for those listeners who might not be fully familiar with yoga, can you maybe give us an example of what that kind of touch would look like in a yoga setting? For example, if we take like a super simple pose that listeners can maybe imagine as you're describing it, and what would that look like? What can they imagine that touch to be like on the shoulders? Or what are we talking about when you say these yoga assists?
Yeah. And I guess I want to take one step back to answer that. So my methodology is called the rubber band method. And within it, we look at touch as not just a singular tool. It's a multifaceted tool. And it's meant to provide kinesthetic awareness. What does that mean? We're using tactile or hands-on cues to help a student feel their body in some way. And there's 2 ways that can be performed. One might be an adjustment, which means we're helping them correct or refine their pose in some way. We're helping them change it. And by doing so, they're building their proprioceptive awareness of how to use their muscles in their body, of how to hold their body in space. If you are someone who's disembodied, that actually is a a huge thing to get back, to be able to feel your body in space and know how to hold it in space in various ways, right? Because yoga, we contort our body in lots of unusual ways, unusual to how we normally go about our daily lives. And so you can place, for example, say someone's in a warrior two and you place your hand outside of their knee and say, press your knee towards my hand. Once they touch your knee, once their knee touches your hand, they can feel that and they go, oh, that's my hip activating, abducting in order to align my knee over my ankle. And so that just very subtle, gentle, tactile cue on their body gives them that kinesthetic awareness to know, oh, okay, this is how I want to hold my body in this shape. Now, an assist takes it a little bit further. Let's assume a student is in child's or Shavasana. Let's go real simple, Shavasana, because most people know what that is, right? You're laying flat on the ground. It's almost like you're standing up, but you're on your back on your mat. Assists are meant to heighten the experience of the pose, enhance it in some way. If you've experienced trauma or if you've experienced a busy, hectic day and you're just living with stress like an average human being, it can be easy to go into Shavasana and start thinking about your to-do list or your grocery list or whatever it might be, the person breathing next to you in class. And then the teacher comes over and let's say they give a neck traction assist, where essentially you're just palpating up the back of the neck, creating length and along the base of the skull. That's one example. Maybe they're allowing the chest press where they're just doing a little slightly firm pressure, listening to the tissues, because I train learning how to read the tissues when you're offering these assists to the basically just to the corners of the chest where the shoulder and the chest meet, right? Just on those upper ribs. You're applying a back and forth palpating pressure, or maybe it's the arch palpation where you just use your thumbs and work along the arch of the student's foot. In all of these, you're heightening the awareness of ease. You're heightening that awareness of being grounded. So all of a sudden, instead of being in your mind and thinking about what you need to run to the store for or what you need to do later in the day, etc., all of a sudden you go, oh, hello, this is my body. I'm in my body on this mat, and this Shavasana feels really good. And we can get into all the science speak of this or that about proprioception and embodiment, this, that, or whatever. What is it? It's just being in your body and feeling it. And sometimes it feeling really good. As simple as just a neck traction, a chest press, or an arch palpation.
I can definitely see the benefits of that as you're describing that. Having lost that connection to my body myself, and actually physically very often not knowing where my feet were when I was walking, which sounds really weird, but it happens. When that mind-body connection is disconnected like that, that happens all the time. I can see how bringing back that connection through touch could be really helpful in even restoring a lot of that awareness. Where are our limbs? Where are we walking? Where are we moving? And that created, I think for me, would create a sense of safety, as you said, because I finally would feel reconnected to my body.
And I love your anecdotal example because someone who's fully embodied might not even think about their feet. And then all of a sudden you're in this context where agency has been practiced and upheld. The teacher, I'm all about clear consent, meaning it's very clear what you're offering, what you're providing, and you're giving students a way to consent or decline in a way that feels private. So that way they're not peer pressured to be the odd man out if they say no. Then if they do say no, then it's totally honored and that they have the right to say no at any point throughout the class. But so you've already created this agency. The student has consented, they're open to it. And then you give them the arch palpation or the leg lift in Shavasana. There's a few ways that we can work with the feet and even more as I go into more advanced trainings. But say you don't have that connection that's there. And then all of a sudden you're giving them this tactile cue along their feet. They're feeling it. They're dropping down into their feet. And what is one of the most simple practices for grounding? Feel your feet. And if you can't feel your feet, but now all of a sudden you are, that's magic. That I don't know, that's beautiful. And it does to me show another way that we're co-regulating with someone because someone is there helping us feel our feet, ground down into our body, be present, and feel safe all while doing it.
Is this something that you offer only in California, or are there more yoga studios that are starting to actually use this approach? I feel like this should be everywhere. It should be available for people to incorporate into their practices if that feels aligned for them. The physical thing, of course, is that a lot of people can't travel or they might not live in the US. Do you offer this only in California?
Good question. And I do want to just preface it by saying thank you. And I agree. And that's what I'm trying to change, because I think that there's a lot of touch that can even be injurious in yoga spaces or not necessarily consensual. And so I am trying to elevate our standards and shift the tide and get as many teachers as I can on board with this form of anatomy-based, consent-driven, biomechanically precise form of touch in yoga. I teach as many teachers as I can. I personally offer it in yoga, but in California and to other spaces. I teach in Bali and I'm open to other places, but any teacher that I have trained also offers it. So I'm trying to build that community as much as possible through the book that's available on Amazon and then through my online school, because my number one goal is to be able to give anyone access to touch. And some might think, especially if you live in California, that getting access to touch via yoga is actually a high price tag thing. But there are so many spaces where it's donation based or it's free. It just comes down to a teacher who wants to provide it in their classes, whether that's one-on-one, whether that's a large group. It really can be provided in any of those spaces if the teacher is open to offering it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great opportunity. Listeners, if we have some yoga teachers listening in who might be interested in that, you can connect with Kiara after the episode and see what the availabilities are and what the possibilities are with this. Now, I am curious a little bit about, we're talking about coming into a space like a yoga studio and then having consensual touch, but can we also work with this when we're by ourselves, or maybe for people who don't have access to this physically? Can we work with self-touch with your methodology? Is there a way to apply some of these things? Maybe we can't reach our bottoms of our feet or something for Shavasana, but maybe there are things. Is there ways that we could get started, even if we maybe can't find a physical space at the moment?
I think that's the rub, is that no, it really is about co-regulation and doing it with another person. Now, does it have to be your yoga teacher? Not necessarily. You could do it with a friend if you practice on your own, or if you have a group of friends that you practice with. But it is really a two-person experience, in the sense that I think that, to step back one beat, the reason why this is hands-on assist and touch are so good for our health isn't just the co-regulation. It's that when we are contacted in a way that feels safe, it feels consensual. Science and research has proven over and over again, there's extensive research on it, that contact from another person, actual person, so not a device, not a robot, like a human being, living, breathing human being, that it measurably and significantly lowers cortisol in our blood. It reduces stress as a result. It reduces depression. It reduces anxiety. It reduces felt pain. And what's amazing is that it reduces future instances of any of those. So it can help you avoid anxiety. It can help you avoid depression, and et cetera, et cetera. But I think the reason why it is that way, why it's specifically a human, another human touching us, that creates those health benefits, is that we're wired to be in a tribe. We live in a lot of first world nations. We're so individualistic, and we think that we can do it ourselves. Or we might be in a situation, unfortunately, where we don't have access to friends or family or whomever to touch us. And so we don't get access to intimate touch, or we don't allow personal, intimate touch. And so what's available to us right now is pretty much just clinical touch, going to a doctor or a physical therapist or something like that. And either intimate or clinical, they might not necessarily be accessible to us. But can we find a context-driven form of touch where we can go take a yoga class, even if it's like a chair yoga class, or if it's some other type of yoga class, if the teacher knows how to modify it for what they are providing, whether it's yin, restorative, trauma-informed, etc., they can offer this type of physical contact. And so, unfortunately, I don't think there's a way to do it yourself, because I think that really the benefits are based on our biology from a really primal standpoint, going, oh, I can survive because I'm connected to a tribe. Like, I'm okay because I'm with other people. And anecdotally, for me, a big piece of my trauma healing, I healed so much doing things on my own. But the missing link, and my therapist would even tell you, was that co-regulation piece, like being able to feel like I'm safe with others. We live in a populated world, not necessarily by ourselves out in the woods. And so we get to teach our nervous systems in a way that we are safe, that we are connected, that we are part of the human race.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I was just curious how you feel about that, what your perspective is, because I'm just going to add one more piece of research, maybe for our listeners as well. And you can, of course, look this up online, but there have been studies done, and I think especially around attachment theory, that I don't know if they did this on human babies as well, but on monkeys for sure, where when the little monkeys didn't actually have physical touch as they were growing, they put wireframe monkey mothers and things like that, but not actually a physical monkey mother with them. The monkeys didn't actually thrive. Human touch, it's not just a nice thing to have. It's not just something that feels good, but human touch really is one of those things that can change how we thrive in life and how we heal, as you said. So I feel it's a really important part that, especially in the last few years, with the pandemic and things like that, that really got cut short, got cut out of our lives a lot. And yet it is such an essential part of us actually thriving in this world. So I just wanted to add that, because I feel some people might think touch, oh, that's nice, I give my friend a hug. There's such a really important piece that actually is very much life-changing, life-supporting, life-affirming when we're working with touch on that. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
To your point, I think that touch gets minimized because it's such a basic part of life. I say basic, but it's not that we're necessarily getting it all the time. It just is so fundamental. Like, I remember back in the day, I would ask people, like, did anyone ever actually train you to run, like how to properly run? And it's no, I just started doing it from when I was a kid. Same with breathing, right? Did anyone ever really teach you how to breathe? No, I just automatically did it. And that's the thing with touch, is that we overlook it because it just seems so fundamental. And as we get older, and maybe as we live in more like isolated living situations, meaning we might live by ourselves, or we might not be partnered with anyone, or we're just living in a first world nation where touch is really like poo-pooed a little bit, like you don't just openly touch people, then we really minimize it and we don't value how important it is. And what's interesting is that those same studies that you were talking about, they were done on children. There's the monkey one, of course, which is heartbreaking. And then there's also the children in orphanages where they looked at them and studied them. And it is heartbreaking as far as it literally altering their brain development, increasing their mortality. They had lasting nervous system dysregulation, I believe, for the course of their life. Like, it's really significant how lack of touch affected them. But then that's not as easily transferable to the mass populace, right? Like, we think, oh, I had a family with me, I got touched, like I seem like I'm okay. And those were kids, I'm an adult, it doesn't apply to me. But it's like, actually, it's a fundamental need that our biology requires, just like water, just like air. We need to be contacted, and it really does improve our health. What I think is interesting, and I make this kind of correlation here, is that in the United States in recent years, the Surgeon General announced that we had a health crisis around a loneliness epidemic. Because think of this, you're obviously not getting touched or having much in-person contact if you're lonely. And loneliness can be as bad, I think he said, as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It increases the risk of heart disease, stroke, dementia, depression. If you're not getting that connection, and from a very simple standpoint, touch is connection, and it causes these really negative effects to your health, and it has all of these positive effects to your health when you do have it. It seems to me that it's literally required for our well-being.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And as you said, that gets minimized a lot. And I'm glad we're talking about that so that we can start adding that back into our lives. And there are, I think, a lot of places that we could add that in where this can be consensual and we can feel very comfortable with that, which is the primary thing that we'd be concerned about, especially for people who are healing, right? I feel there are many opportunities where that could come in. And even yoga can be, I want to say it can be applicable and beneficial for so many things, whether we're talking about chronic pain or we're talking about mental health, all of those things. So yeah, I feel for our listeners, there's a piece to take away here to maybe pause and really just kind of see where you live, what is possible, what can you look at, and maybe get Kiara's book as well and start reading up on that and get some more resources and information for your own healing journey. And then, of course, we need to get more teachers out there that are going to teach this all over the world. So that's my second call is, as I said, any yoga teachers on here, please reach out so we can make this happen. But yeah, thank you. And is your book called The Rubber Band Method as well, or is your book a different title?
It's called Hands-on Yoga Assists,
Okay.
A Teacher's Guide to the Rubber Band Method. So if you look up Hands-on Yoga Assists, it comes up. But yeah, and I would love to see teachers providing this, because the thing about touch being good for our health is that it's not necessarily about duration. So people might hear this and think, oh, okay, I need to go get that massage. Actually, research proves that it's frequency, not duration, that we need. We need to be touched frequently in order for it to improve our health, which is perfect in the context of yoga, right? If you practice a couple times a week and the teacher offers hands-on assists, you're getting that frequency rather than duration. And what's also really important to take away is that we might think that to receive touch, it needs to be from an intimate partner or someone that is close to us for it to create these health benefits. Research didn't show that either. What's proven is that it actually doesn't matter who provides the touch. So it can be your yoga teacher. And I want to offer too, like before we close, is that for me in my history with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, I'm a massage therapist. I'm not actually a touchy-feely person at all. I'm not someone who's all about touching. I'm very context-driven touch because I know that it helps, but I want it to serve a purpose. And so I do think that if teachers start implementing it, when they don't need to have a million tools under their toolbox, just simple assists that they can offer as far as some child's pose or shavasana corpse pose assists, very basic stuff. And that actually does create a big impact. It becomes another somatic tool that they can build into their classes that really helps the wellness of their students, whether they're experiencing trauma, have experienced trauma, or if they're otherwise healthy and just living with stress like all humans do. Regardless of the populace, touch has been proven to help everyone.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's beautifully said. And just, I think something that we can leave our listeners with to think of, like I said, a little bit about their own lives and see how that could plug into that. And I have one curiosity before we wrap up. Why is it called the rubber band method? Will you share that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So for me, not all touch is created equal, and not all assists are one size fits all, meaning we can't approach your body and my body the same way, right? We can take the technique, but we really need to apply it in a way that is suitable for my tissues and suitable for your tissues. And so in order to teach tactile awareness is what it's called. So teaching teachers how to listen with their hands when they go to touch a student, meaning how are the student's tissues? Are they tight? Are they loose? Everyone is built different. And believe it or not, what you feel when you're touching a student to offer an assist, it feels a lot like stretching a rubber band. And rubber bands come in all shapes and sizes, just like humans. And so when you learn to listen what stretch feels like and what that bound of stretch, where the body stops and go, nope, no more, you learn, oh, okay, that is just like when I stretch out a rubber band and it reaches its bounds. And so it's based on the analogy that I use to teach instructors how to listen with their hands and how to essentially offer assists that are adapted for each student that you touch, because each person is their own rubber band and they all stretch a little differently and they all act their own unique way.
Amazing. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. I figured some of our listeners might be curious about
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Why it's
And I'm
that.
always happy to be asked because that is the heart of what I'm teaching, is that we do need to know how to have tactile awareness as teachers. We can't just cookie cutter all of our assists, really understanding how to read body tissues when we touch someone.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, share with our listeners how they can connect with you if they're wanting to purchase your book, or they live in California, maybe where they can actually physically come to you, and anything else that you offer for resources for our listeners.
Yeah, they can find out everything about me at rubberbandmethod.com. That's where my online school is, where they can have on-demand courses. I literally teach over 55 techniques. So there are tons of different ways that you can offer assist. Not all are needed. You can start with the basics, start with foundations, just the first 15. I have that online course. I also have my book that's available on Amazon, Hands-On Yoga Assists, A Teacher's Guide to the Rubber Band Method. Those are the best places to find me and to really get your hands on how to do this and start offering hands-on assist today. If they go to my website, rubberbandmethod.com, they have the opportunity to get a free technique that they can start using immediately. It is very user-friendly, one that you can offer to most people, the general populace. And they can also get 15% off if they are interested in taking any of the online courses. I built everything to be start learning now, start applying now, start building it into your practice, because my mission is to get safe touch out there. We need more of it, not necessarily intimate, not necessarily clinical, but this middle of the road, somatic guided touch that is applicable in yoga and that most people can get their hands on. So they literally could start offering hands-on assist day one.
Amazing. And we, of course, will be linking to Kiara's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there where you can find her book and all the courses that she's talking about. And of course, classes if you want to go in person. And I just want to thank you, Kiara, for being here today and taking the time to share this wisdom with our listeners. I feel I've learned so much just in this past half hour, and I hope our listeners are going to take away some of those nuggets and actually start plugging them into their own lives. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing that with us.
You're so welcome. Thank you. I really appreciate your time and having me.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in today, and take care of yourselves and be well. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Jōrni Podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Jōrni on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejorni.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.